What is up guys, Tava here, and an ND filter or neutral density filter is an essential part of the filmmaking process, especially when shooting videos or photos outside, because it limits the light that comes into the lens, allowing you to have a lower f-stop and a lower shutter speed, which allows for that more cinematic motion blur that you see in a lot of shots, as well as the shallower depth of field, which also helps to emphasize that cinematic look. However, as great and necessary as ND filters are, they come at a bit of a downside because they are often quite expensive, because you need high quality glass in front of your lens so it actually emphasizes the image and doesn't end up taking away from the lens, and they can get quite expensive because of that. And since the filter has to be so high quality, when you buy cheaper options like this Vivitar one right here, you often get images that are much less desirable, as you can see by this very pink image that this filter creates. The other issue with ND filters, like any filters, is that they match a specific lens mount. So every different lens you have might have a different lens mount. For example, this filter is 58mm and this isn't going to fit on a 65mm lens, or whatever example lens you might have. So this also causes problems. You need to buy more filters for different lenses, which is a very unfortunate thing. Another downside is that ND filters often only come in a specific darkness. So if you buy an ND8 filter, it's only ND8. So basically you're going to need to buy a lot of different expensive ND filters to accommodate different situations. So whether it's a little bit bright and you just need to cut the light a little bit, or it's full daylight shining down and you have to cut it completely. So it just makes it really annoying to have to buy all these different expensive filters for different lens sizes. A popular option does exist to help you get rid of all your different ND filters and just have one that can do everything, and it's called a variable ND filter. And basically how it works, it has two polarizing lenses, and as they turn against each other, they change in brightness and darkness. So you can get a lot of different ND range out of it. But the problem with these is they're even more expensive than the regular ND filters because they have twice as many elements. So the good variable ND filters are often very out of people's budget. Because of all these downsides, I've very often pushed the ND filter out of my budget and not even looked into buying them because they're just expensive and it doesn't really seem like you need them. But in reality, they're very nice to have and greatly up that cinematic production value very easily. So the other day, I bought a very cheap variable ND filter off of Amazon that actually had pretty good reviews. So when it arrives, I'm gonna give it a shot and see if it yields some decent results. And I think it's here. So after paying about $25 on Amazon, I got this, which is the K&F Concept Variable ND Filter. And as you can see, if I turn the knob on the front, you can see how it changes from light to dark, and it has that nice variable filter, which is usually not $25. It's usually like $200 to $300 for the nice high quality one. So I thought I'd give this a shot, do some tests with it, and see if it yields anything decent. And of course, to test an ND filter, we need to head outside where it's bright. So let's go. So I'm outside shooting, and as you can see, this is about the worst lighting situation you could possibly have. The sun is basically right overhead, shining bright down with no clouds in the sky whatsoever to diffuse the light. So it's really harsh and bright light, and to properly expose this right now at an f2.8 aperture, I've had to raise my shutter speed up to 1/640th of a second, which makes it super jittery and harsh looking footage. Because my frame rate right now is 24 frames per second, I should have a shutter speed of about 1/50th of a second or 1/48th of a second. So I'm way too high, and as you can see, it's making the motion not look great. So what I'm gonna do is screw on this ND filter right here and show you the difference. So once I have the filter on, you can see it hasn't made a huge difference because it's at the minimum variable ND amount that it can possibly go to, which is about ND4, which basically reduces the light by one stop. So if I start to move the filter, you can see how it gets darker and darker, effectively making the image more properly exposed. And so right here is the maximum amount that this ND filter can reduce the brightness of this image. So if I bring my shutter speed up from 1/640 to all the way down to like 1/50th, you can see that this is my shot at an f-stop of 2.8 and 1/50th a second. You can see it's underexposed still at this point. So that's a really good thing to have with an ND filter. You can get that nice shallow depth of field outside with the proper shutter speed, and you don't have to worry about it looking bad. The only problem I've seen with this cheap ND filter is that the max ND amount, which is ND 400, which brings the stop down by about 8 stops, is that right around the corners on a wide angle lens, you get a little bit of dark vignetting. So as you can see, as you move around, it has a little bit of vignetting around the edges. Basically what happens is when you get to the highest NDs, you can see the two polarizing filters intersect with each other and kind of go over each other. And so by doing this, they create some vignettes in the corners where they are the darkest, and the other two corners end up lighter than the middle. So it makes for a little bit of weird shot, but only if you're using that really high ND. But considering it's a $25 lens at ND 400 and a wide angle lens, it's really not that bad at all. So if you zoom in a little bit, you completely get rid of any of that vignetting that you might have seen up there, as well as if you just get rid of that ND a little bit, you just move it down a little bit, you can see that most of the vignetting is completely gone. So considering the circumstances, this one little issue really isn't that bad at all. I've also noticed that there might be a little bit of green tinting with this filter, but it's really not bad and can be fixed pretty easily with white balance adjustments. So now I'm going to show you an example with and without the filter, zoomed in to different amounts to see the sharpness differences. So let's do that. So after reviewing some of the footage, I was very impressed. Even at 300 times zoom, the quality difference really isn't that noticeable even with and without the filter. And this is really impressive because there's 2 additional layers of glass in front of the lens. So it's really great that this filter doesn't really reduce the quality of the image even at a high ND level. So here I have my camera set to auto, and as I move the variable up, you can see the adjustments that it has on the image and how it affects the image overall. So from the minimum ND, here we go all the way up to 400. And right there is the maximum, and if it adjusts, you can see the effect it has on the image. So overall, I'm really impressed with this filter. It's astounding you can get this good of quality for such a cheap price, especially when the competition in the same price point is pretty bad. So for low budget filmmakers, this is an absolute steal. Oh, and one more thing that was kind of distracting me while filming is that you can see a reflection in the filter while you're shooting, which is kind of stupid that this is distracting me, but just something to mention. But that's basically it. If you want to buy this filter, I'll leave it linked in the description down below. But that's it for today. If you like this video, be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you all next time.